I stand up against bullying because of the Jewish value of ha'choer tochir. You shall rebuke. That is the obligation to be a social critic when you see that society and individuals are making terrible mistakes. Such criticism is viewed as an expression of care for others.
I stand up against bullying because of the Jewish value of havanot panim, avoidance of public humiliation. That is the loss of personal dignity at the hands of others is considered one of the gravest wrongs in Judaism, akin to murder.
I stand up against bullying because the Jewish value of ona'at devarim, verbal humiliation. This is a series of laws aimed to prevent people from verbally abusing one another.
I stand up against bullying because of the Jewish value of tzedek tzedek tirdof. Justice, 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 you must pursue. The obligation to actively promote justice.
I stand up against bullying because of the Jewish value, Zelo Elohim, image of God. That is the foundational principle that every human being is created in the image of God and must be treated accordingly.
I stand up against bullying because of the Jewish value of pikuach nefesh, the saving of life. That is the highest Jewish obligation that overrides almost every other law.
I stand up against bullying because of the Jewish value of makif shalom ve'ru. Seek peace and pursue it. That is the obligation to reduce conflicts, a series of laws and ethical teachings advocating peace, the conflict resolution methodologies, and prohibiting violence against the innocent.
I stand up against bullying because of the Jewish values of Lashon Hara and Refilut. Refilut prohibits statements which are not true, whereas Lashon Hara expands this prohibition to include even factually truthful speech if it might possibly malign an individual or ruin a reputation. The gravity of offense comes from the fact that it is nearly impossible to retract these types of statements.
I stand up against bullying because of the Jewish value Ahavat Ger, love of the stranger in your midst. That is a series of laws insisting on compassionate behavior towards strangers, empathy with foreigners, and their inclusion in every aspect of society.
I stand up against bullying because of the Jewish value of the Adam Yahid, a single human being. That is the rabbinic concept that one human being was created originally so that no one can say, my father was greater than your father. In other words, every human being is unique and inherently precious.
Okay, so up here we have all of the 10 Jewish values listed.
So what do these Jewish values mean to you? How can you connect to them? Jake, want to say something about how you connected to these traditions and why you're bullying?
Sure. I think avoidance of public humiliation definitely speaks to me and can probably speak to a lot of people in this room. It says here that it's one of the gravest wrongs in Judaism. And I find that really interesting because it's probably one value that I feel like we're playing with fire a lot because the line is really blurred. And I think we all sort of engage in situations where we're teasing other people. And we're just giving, our friends and our loved ones, or even just acquaintances, a hard time. And we think it's funny because if we were in their situation, we say to ourselves, they're taking it lightly. But oftentimes we don't really know when they're feeling humiliated. And I think it's important to think about that and to really consider when we are crossing that line.
I think the value Ona'at Devarim, which is verbal humiliation, really speaks something to me. In the movie, you saw at one point, I think an official said that if it wasn't physical abuse or if there wasn't something physical going on, if the girl wasn't being physically hurt, that it didn't count and that it didn't matter that she was being picked on. So I think that it's really interesting that there's specifically a value for verbal abuse, because clearly in the video not all of the kids who were having problems were being physically hurt, but still the verbal abuse was enough to push them to hurt themselves or really have big issues.
If there's anything that you want to share that you saw in the movie that you thought was really important or meaningful or anything, put your hand up and I'll call on you.
So I thought something that was really meaningful was when Alex said that he was being pushed so hard that he wanted to become the bully. That was just really, really it's just a terrible cycle that happens. Like the victim just can't do anything about it. I thought that was just like an awful thing.
Also terrible that schools in the movie, they did nothing. It was like most of the time they did nothing about it.
I've noticed, and it's very true, a lot of the times people will repetitively be told that bullying is going on and just do nothing about it, and then later the victim is like chastised and they're yelled at, being like, why didn't you do anything? This is your fault. This will happen to other people. And a lot of the time they say, like they said, you don't trust us to handle this? And the answer is no, we don't. And it's this whole, everybody's so quick to deny responsibility that nothing gets done. Like nobody wants to embrace the responsibility because they don't want to look bad personally, and it's so easy to blame the victim.
They all the time say that like a camera on a bus is there to protect a kid, and something that really stood out to me in this movie is they showed these videos, they saw all these things, and yet they didn't do anything. They just sat there and looked at it and were like, yeah, we're doing things about it, but you can give a kid detention. I've had friends, I've been in situations where you give a kid a detention, they're just gonna go back and bully the kid for it because you got the kid in trouble. You went in tattletale. You did something like that, but that's not the way to do it. The schools need to actually suspend the kids or teach the kids a lesson. It's not the right thing to do. And if they're saying that a bus is safe and not using the footage on the camera or doing anything about that, it's just wrong.
I was thinking a lot about the ignorance of the teachers and the staff, and when the one assistant principal, when she was talking to one of the bullies, she straight up said to him, go for it, bully him all you want, attack him, do whatever you want, but then we're gonna put it in your discipline file or something. And just the fact that like she was saying, do it, maybe you'll get some sort of disciplinary effect, but like what lesson does that teach him? She never said don't do it. She said do it, but you'll get in trouble.
The most standout point of the movie for me was when Alex's parents went to his assistant principal and said like, I don't feel comfortable with my kid riding the bus anymore. And she like weaved around it, and she was just like, I have grandchildren too, I'm worried about them. And she was like, okay, but what are you gonna do about my kid? Like that like was, I think that happens with like administrators don't want to take not take responsibility, but they don't want to admit that their school has this problem, and they just weave around it, and it's like, that's terrible.
So something that struck me was one of the best friends of the 11-year-old who committed suicide said how he was the most amazing person he knew, and he just is such an incredible friend. And I just wonder like if his friend really knew that, and if it would have made a difference in him like making the decision to end his life or not. So I think it's important to like that we remember to make sure our friends and our family know how much we care about them and how much we value them.
There was that one assistant principal who kept talking about how like she had ridden the bus and said the kids were as good as gold. Thought that was a really safe place when as we saw in the video, it clearly wasn't. And I guess they were trying to, and Michelle talked about how they were trying to hide it. But the thing that bothered me the most was the conversation with the two kids like after recess, where they were in an argument and the kid wouldn't shake his hand, and she told him that by not shaking his hand, he was being a bully. And I don't think that's like, I thought that was kind of ridiculous. I didn't like, that personally just bothered me a lot.
One of the parts in the movie that really stuck out was when Alex was talking to his mom, and his mom said, well, those people aren't your friends who are beating you, and Alex said, well then, who is my friend? And I think it's like important to note that like, when you know nothing else, when every single person is always after you, and you have no one to rely on, like Helby said she only made it because her friends were there to rely on, and it's important to really keep your friends close and like really understand who's your friend, and like those people beating on you are not your friends, and that you can always find people to help rely on you, and you need to be able to find trusted people to do that. And a lot of times the schools don't do that for you, and just need to find a way to put yourself in a situation. And being like, being Allison BUG is like, it's important, I think, just to like understand when these people are being bullied, that just to be there as a friend so they have someone to rely on is an important thing.
You may not see it in your schools right now. Like you may see little instances where someone's picking on someone, or you just see someone pushing them over or something like that. But in our area, I feel that it's not a big deal. I don't think that it's as big of a deal as we saw in the video. But that doesn't mean that we can't stand up for it, and that doesn't mean that we can't push forward and really advocate for it and really help other places in the country, because in the video it said it's a United States school thing. It's not just in one particular part. I know you guys understand that, but it could be happening around the world too. It's happening everywhere, and the thing is, you need to advocate for it. You need to really go out and go away from this area too, because this area is good, but in other places, it's pretty bad. It's really bad.
You can take the